Ever stepped out into a heavy snowstorm and just felt it? There's this freaky kind of quiet that rolls in with deep winter. At first, it feels chill, peaceful even, but nah. That silence, it's not empty. It's watching you. Tonight, we're diving into 3 real-deal winter horror stories from folks who learned the hard way. No legends, no campfire BS. These people swear every crazy detail actually went down. When the world's buried in white and you're all alone, you're at the mercy of whatever's lurking out there in the cold. Grab a blanket, double-check your locks, and listen close. This first story comes from a guy named Leo. He was in his early 20s, needed quick money, and wanted a bit of peace and quiet. So he took a winter caretaker job at a line of remote rental cabins deep in the Appalachian Mountains. It sounded like an easy gig. Live in the main lodge, and just hike out after big snowstorms to check on the empty cabins. The owner was a gruff dude Leo only ever talked to on the phone. The only weird warning he gave was, "Snow plays tricks out there. It muffles stuff. It changes how things look. Just be careful." Leo wrote him off as being dramatic. On his way up, the last person he saw was an old man at a tiny gas station. The guy gave him a long, unsettling look and said, "Headed to the Ridge cabins?" When Leo said yes, the man just shook his head and muttered, "Hope you're good out there." A strange, chilling thing to say, and it stuck with Leo. The first couple of weeks were perfect. Snow, quiet, utter peace. Then came the first major storm. Leo strapped on his snowshoes and got to work. Everything looked normal until he reached cabin 3. One front window was wide open, but the snow around it completely untouched. Not a single footprint. Leo circled the cabin, and he was the first person to break the snow layer. He shut the window and checked inside. Everything seemed fine, but as he turned to leave, his eye caught something on the otherwise perfectly made bed. A small patch of ice crystals, no bigger than a handprint, melted into the middle of the quilt. It didn't make sense. It was inside, but it felt like a silent, impossible touch. Over the next few weeks, the peaceful silence started to feel heavy, like the entire forest was holding its breath. He'd constantly catch movement in the corner of his eye, but see nothing when he turned. That crushing feeling of being watched never left him. Things escalated when he reached cabin 33, the most isolated property on the ridge. The second he walked in, a cold hit him that wasn't normal winter cold. It seeped into him, burning like it was alive. He got out fast. On his way back, he saw it. A tall, thin figure across a clearing, too far to see details. Just a dark shape standing upright among the trees. He forced himself to believe it was a stump. The next day, he saw it again, much closer, right at the edge of the woods near the lodge, just standing there. Leo shielded his eyes from the flurries, watching it for maybe 5 seconds. When the wind blew past and the view cleared, the figure hadn't walked away or crouched. It had simply vanished, as if the forest had swallowed it whole. That night, the worst blizzard of the winter rolled in. The power went out. Leo camped in front of the fireplace, clutching an iron poker, desperately trying to steady his nerves. The quiet outside felt profoundly wrong. Around midnight, he heard it. A slow, steady scrape, scrape, scrape along the outside log wall. He grabbed the poker tight. The scraping paused. Then came a faint, careful scratching at the window beside him. He wiped a small circle in the frost and leaned in. A face stared back. It was pale, impossibly thin and hollow, with a wide, lipless mouth. Human, but terribly wrong. Its dark eyes didn't just reflect the firelight, they drank it in, glowing with the warmth they were stealing. Leo fell backward, gasping, and the thing didn't blink. It simply tilted its head so fast and unnaturally far that Leo heard a phantom crack. Then he heard the metallic sound of his doorknob turning. He screamed, grabbed the poker, and yelled at the top of his lungs like his life depended on it. The turning stopped. The silence after was the worst part. He sat there all night, shaking, watching that door like it was about to burst open. It never did. When morning finally came, the storm had stopped. Leo waited another hour before even daring to check. He slowly opened the door. Nothing. The snow was perfect, smooth, untouched. No footprints leading to the door, no prints leaving, nothing at all. Whatever was there never disturbed the snow. Leo didn't pack. He grabbed his keys and wallet and hiked out without looking back. He quit the second he got a signal. He never found out what was in those woods, but he learned the truth. The silence of deep winter isn't peace. It's just proof that whatever is hunting you doesn't need to walk. This story comes from a couple named Mark and Sarah. They were doing the classic cross-country road trip, which meant crossing a high mountain pass known for sudden, unpredictable storms. The weather report called for light flurries. Reality, of course, had other plans. As they started their climb, the light snow turned into a full-on white swirl. Visibility dropped to nothing in minutes. Mark's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, and Sarah watched the temperature on the dashboard plummet. Then the car jerked sideways, hydroplaned, and slid hard into a snowbank. The engine died instantly. They were lost. No cell service, no traffic, just them and the snow and the wind screaming outside. They wrapped up in blankets, tried to stay calm, and waited. A few minutes later, Sarah heard something faint, a high-pitched, awful wail carried on the wind. Mark brushed it off, swearing it was just the wind noise hitting the peaks. But it didn't sound like wind. It sounded exactly like a woman crying. The wailing grew louder, and the car got colder. Not normal winter cold, a biting, impossible cold. They watched their own breath turn heavy, then thin, then suddenly stop condensing at all, as if the very air inside the car had been sucked dry of all warmth. It felt like the cold itself was sitting between them. Then came the slow, deliberate tap, tap, tap on Mark's driver's side window. It was the sound of a single, long fingernail against the glass. Mark wiped the frost, saw nothing, but the tapping didn't stop. It moved along the length of the car, traveling to the rear window, getting faster, sharper. It was a frantic rhythm that sounded less like a tap and more like someone trying to claw their way inside. Mark slammed the key into the ignition again. Click, click, nothing. Sarah suddenly screamed. A woman was walking toward them through the blizzard. Long, dark hair, bare feet, wearing a thin, soaking white dress, whipping in the wind. Her skin glowed in the headlights, but it looked unnaturally smooth, like frozen porcelain. She didn't shiver. She didn't struggle. She just glided through the deep snow. The wind screamed around her, and when she got close, her face looked hollow and grief-stricken. Her eyes were dark pits that didn't look at them. They looked through them, as if they were already part of the storm. She lifted her hand, not waving, beckoning. Her mouth opened, and that awful, high-pitched wail blasted out of her like a physical force. The temperature in the car crashed to zero. Her breath shot forward in a glittering stream of ice and hit the windshield. Frost exploded across the glass in seconds, sealing them inside. That jolted Mark into action. He slammed the key one last time. The engine roared to life. He reversed hard, the car ripping out of the snowbank, and they tore down the pass blind, never looking back at the ghostly figure vanishing in the storm. They made it to a tiny town and crashed into the nearest open inn. The old innkeeper took one look at their shredded nerves and poured them stiff drinks without asking. When Sarah eventually told him what they saw, his face fell. He told them the local legend, the Wailing Woman, a young woman trapped in a blizzard over a century ago. She foolishly left her carriage for help and was found frozen days later. Now, she wanders the storms, using her grief and her impossible cold to pull travelers toward her lonely eternity. Mark and Sarah were lucky. She usually doesn't let people go, Sometimes the true horror isn't the storm itself. It's the thought that some tragedies are so great, they never really leave the mountain, and they never want you to leave either. Alex wasn't just a camper. He was a hardcore winter survivalist. For him, a good time meant being deep in a frozen forest, completely alone. He loved the cold air in his lungs, the satisfying crunch of snow under his boots, that deep, raw peace that would make anyone else panic. The first couple of days of this trip, they were perfect. Crisp air, untouched snow, nothing but the sound of his own breathing. But by day 3, everything just went wrong. Stepping out of his tent, Alex froze. The forest wasn't just quiet anymore, it was dead. There were no birds, no rustling branches, nothing. Just this unnatural, heavy stillness that made his skin prickle. He tried to shake it off, blaming exhaustion, but that feeling wouldn't leave him. He felt eyes on his back, a persistent shiver crawling up his spine, like something was watching him, maybe even following. That afternoon, a smell hit him. It was strange, wet, coppery, like old blood and rust. He glanced down, instantly repulsed. For a split second, he swore he saw a thin, dark stain seeping into the pristine white snow near a tree trunk. When he looked again, it was gone, absorbed. He took a deep, shaky breath, convincing himself it was nothing. Then midnight hit. Tucked inside his sleeping bag, Alex's senses went on high alert. A sound pierced the heavy silence outside his tent. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, bipedal. Not a deer, not a bear. They were slowly, methodically circling his tent. His heart hammered in his chest, a loud drum in the deafening quiet. He gripped the zipper, forcing himself to move. Slowly, he cracked it open and swept his powerful headlamp across the tree line. Nothing. Absolute silence again. Too quiet. Morning light brought the proof. His stomach dropped like a stone. There were footprints. Huge, deep impressions forming a perfect circle around his camp. But they were deeply unsettling. They weren't barefoot. They were massive, round, and looked almost clawed. Yet they lacked any discernible heel or toe structure. They looked like something impossibly heavy had just pressed itself into the snow. And here's the kicker. One print was pressed right into the fabric of his tent, just inches from where his head had been sleeping. Alex packed his gear faster than he ever had in his life. He tried to rationalize it. A prank, a weird wildlife trick. But the footsteps started following him immediately. At first, they were slow, measured, perfectly matching his pace. When he stopped to catch his breath, they stopped too. When he moved, they moved. His own heartbeat was now louder than the wind in the trees, mixing with the sickening crunch behind him. Panic finally took over. He bolted, plunging into the deep, fresh snow, his legs burning and his lungs screaming. Behind him, the footsteps went faster. Crunch, 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 gaining ground. He didn't dare look back. Then he tripped. A hidden root caught his foot, and he crashed face first into the ice. Breath ragged, adrenaline surging, he flipped onto his back, ice axe raised, ready to fight whatever impossible thing had been chasing him. The forest was empty, dead silent. He scanned every tree, every shadow. Nothing. Not a single print leading up to him. Just his own marks sunk deep in the snow. But as he swept his eyes across the spot where the sound should have been, he saw it. A single, thin, dark strand, like coarse hair or wire, dangling from a low pine needle, swaying slightly in the silence. It was the only thing proving he wasn't crazy. Alex didn't stop running until he saw the trailhead, sunlight finally cutting through the trees. He never heard the footsteps again. He never saw another track. But he knew. That day, he wasn't the predator he thought he was. He was the prey. And whatever hunted him didn't leave footprints for a reason. Sometimes, he says, it's not the cold you need to survive out there. It's the quiet. Because in the middle of that frozen forest, the silence, it's alive. Winter silence hides a lot. Some people see peace in it. Others see the truth. An empty cabin that isn't empty. A ghost in a blizzard. A hunter that doesn't leave footprints. These stories remind us that when you're snowed in and totally alone, the world gets real quiet. And in that quiet, you can finally hear things you were never meant to hear. Thanks for watching. If you've got your own true winter horror story, email it or drop it in the comments. It might show up in a future video. Stay warm, stay safe, and try not to think about what might be watching from the tree line, waiting for the snow to fall. Sweet dreams, if you can.